In a second-hand set of dimensions, on an astral plane that was never meant to fly, through wavering star mists, see the Greater Tuin. Drifting onwards through space, atop the shell of the world's turtle, are 4 giant elephants, upon whose broad shoulders rests the Discworld. Welcome to Dining Table Discworld. We're reading through the Discworld novels and discussing them at our dining table. Be aware there will be spoilers for the current book and others in the series.
Hello, welcome to Dining Table Discworld. I'm Dave.
I'm Kathy.
And today we're talking about The Light Fantastic by Terry Pratchett, the second of the Discworld novels, and it was published in 1986. So Kathy, what's the synopsis?
Rincewind is a rubbish wizard with a powerful spell stuck in his head. He was last seen having fallen off the edge of the disc, along with Twoflower, a very amiable tourist, and the luggage, a magical and belligerent travelling chest. Literally by magic, all 3 are returned to the disc early in the story. On their continued travels, they meet up with Cohen the Barbarian, the disc's greatest hero, now somewhat geriatric and missing his teeth, and Bethan, a sensible young woman who was rescued from being sacrificed. The wizards of the Unseen University are trying to get the spell in Rincewind's head, whilst dealing with internal power struggles of their own. Meanwhile, a red star has appeared in the sky, and World Turtle Greater Tuin is zooming right at it. So the characters are dealing with their own adventures, they're increasingly aware of a world-ending problem drawing ever closer and making things hotter, and then suddenly there's fascism, which makes the book feel terribly relevant for what's happening now in the year 2023.
Okay, so, your initial impressions?
Horrifyingly relevant, as it turned out. Yeah.
I mean, we do talk about Pratchett's general, riffing on social things and current events and things. We didn't quite expect him to be quite this forward-thinking.
No, I don't think he wanted it either.
No.
This one, I sort of didn't remember bits so well, but I sort of remembered the overall theme of it, or kind of, I guess, the overall plot, but not so many specific little bits. But yeah, I definitely liked it more than Colour of Magic. I mean, he's improved, I think, as a writer, that the characters have improved. There's a better cast of, secondary characters. And yeah, it's better. You can see he's trying to pull things together more. And I think there's a lot of things that, they may have cropped up in the first book, are refined, and then more things being introduced that will go on. It's not as pastiche-y. Like, there are references, but it doesn't feel like he's just taking the mick out of a load of specific things. No. Or at least that's not most of the book.
No. I mean, for me, this obviously is the first Discworld novel. The first one was Discworld short stories put into a collection.
I think it's 4 novellas.
Yeah. This is the first Discworld story. This is the first one that feels like what going forward we're going to expect. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, you can't tell people just to start with this book because it would make absolutely no sense. I think setting up Rincewind and Twoflower in the first book means that you kind of either that or you have to explain them as characters.
Yeah, I suppose both the TV version and the graphic novel put them both together, and there's a lot of the first book you can strip out besides the character bits.
I think you could easily come back to these books and interleave them a bit more, take out some of the stuff. I mean, I don't know how much of Colour of Magic would... Some of it would be obviously left because obviously they need to be able to fall off the edge.
I suppose, depends how you do it. But
anyway, yeah. So yes, I mean, but this is the first one where I think you're definitely looking. He's finding his voice and actually made a novel with a start, a middle, and an end. Even if the start is the end of the last book.
Well, it starts sort of with a Deus Ex Machina, which is obviously normally at the end. So it's like magic just fixed the literal cliffhanger. And now on with the adventure. Which in fairness, some Doctor Who episodes have done.
That's fair. I mean, I do wonder how much he got to sort of writing the second book and going...
I kind of get the impression he said the first one did well, and then he was like, now I have to write something with that.
And then it's like, right, what should we do? Our wizard done it. Well, in this case, the Great Magic Book did it. But
yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So, thoughts?
I have various ones. Like I said before, the characters are improved. Two-Flower and Rincewind aren't introduced, but the secondary characters, there's a better cast of them, because before it was just like, there are various barbarian-y hero people who come and go. Whereas in this, you've got Cohen the Barbarian, who I think is foreshadowed slightly before he actually turns up in Section of Rincewind.
He's mentioned in Colour of Magic.
Oh, yeah, like his name's mentioned, but they mentioned so many barbarians and warriors.
Because Two-Flower wants to, meet him and things. So,
but that whole thing just seems to be stuffed with like heroic figures.
Yes,
I don't think he's in it. I think he's just mentioned.
Oh no, he's just mentioned. Yeah, no, I think he's actually mentioned about what he's doing at the time.
Is he?
Yeah, I think briefly it's Oh,
okay.
Yeah, but anyway,
sure.
That's
And then you've got Bethan, who's actually a rounded female character who I think is dressed reasonably modestly at the start.
Well, I mean, she's a sacrifice, so a druidic sacrifice. So long robes are more the thing there. And
then also you get the introduction of trolls and dwarves, because in the first book you had kind of like, I guess, urban trolls. The ones that are just like, these are the heavies for the like organised crime people or guilds, which I guess 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. In this, you have the more like rural trolls ones that like mountainy, so they're a bit different to the kind of Atmore Pork ones, but it does kind of increase, I guess, troll lore. And you also have a character who's a dwarf, who shows up, and is only there a bit, but is definitely part of it. Because the were named dwarves in Colour of Magic, and obviously they're quite big in certainly the Atmore Pork sections later. The humour felt, like we said, it's not just references. It felt better, but there were some actually quite funny but ridiculous puns.
Yes. They weren't quite as laboured as the Insuwer Ants gag from Colour of Magic.
But like when the wizards are in the wood with the talking trees and they're all ignoring the talking trees, and then there's a bit where it's like, a voice came from above them, it had timbre, which better written down, but that's like timber, but with the last 2 letters the other way around. I found that quite funny. And what was the other one? Oh, when Two-Flower touches the wall of the cottage gingerly.
Oh, yes.
And then it's a gingerbread cottage. So, so you're like, okay. But it's kind of more the humour you expect.
Yeah. And obviously, he was using, classic things like a witch's gingerbread cottage, magically sustained, which, lovely, useful if you're lost in the forest and need a snack and the witch is out.
Yeah. Oh, there's also some ongoing jokes. So, there's a thing about Oblong and Eldritch, which I remembered cropped up before, but forgotten was from this book and was about the luggage.
Yeah.
Because I know later he'll just call back to that.
But yeah, I think the humour is definitely getting stronger for and it's, as I say, it's not just it's humour for the world rather than expecting you to know what this reference is to other
to something else you may have read.
Yes, or may not have read, given our ages.
Yes.
So, what do we think of Kohan the Barbarian? Because obviously this is
isn't it Cohen?
Cohen the Barbarian.
Yeah.
Okay. It's obviously not Conan's.
No,
that's the point.
But it's Cohen, like the surname.
I mean, So he's obviously riffing off Conan the Barbarian. Yeah. Except what is a barbarian, a marauding barbarian, when he gets old?
Genghis Khan. We already have that.
Okay, older than Genghis Khan. I
think Genghis Khan was pretty old. Was it Genghis Khan I'm thinking? Or was it Attila the Hun? One of those. Sorry.
But a marauding barbarian that isn't in charge of a country.
Yeah. So one who isn't like a horse lord or whatever.
Yeah.
So, well, that's the thing, because they're really excited. Oh, Conan the Barbarian. And then Winston's like, I remember my grandfather saying. And then it's like, yes, if your grandfather said what he was doing, then how old is the guy now? So it's very much like, this guy's been living this very difficult life, but he's done well and done it for a long time. But then he is obviously very geriatric, but still trying to act as he was. It's interesting because it's...
Well, it's the only life he knows, I think, is the thing. He's
never had a retirement plan, clearly.
No, obviously not, But he's this is a guy who is extremely old, no teeth, has to eat soup, doesn't really like soup.
It's where you start getting the lisping. So Pratchett obviously will be a thing with later characters a lot, but Pratchett writes the lisping.
Yeah,
so
the phonetic, yeah.
But he doesn't do it for every S. I noticed it's a bit hit and miss. Yeah. I don't know if that's how that works when you're missing teeth.
I have no idea. I don't. I have all my teeth currently, so. But yeah, I think I think he works as a character for a take on the basically barbarians, even the best ones you presume at some point die in.
I think there's an element of, like, he's he's been successful enough to not die, but he's not been so successful he's actually, like, become a warlord with a gang. I know that comes up in later Discworld stuff. But he's not, as you say, he's not ruling a country. He's not, you know, got his own castle or anything. He's obviously still on the road. So it's an element of, like, he's found his niche and he's not been able to get higher, but he's still alive.
To?
Well, it's not super clear, is it?
No, I think in this, I mean, he does, as was alluded to, he does turn up in a later couple of books. And, you know, but I think in this, you don't really know whether back home he's got a vault full of gold and he just likes doing this.
I didn't feel like there was a back home. I feel like he's always travelling.
Yeah. We don't, you know, I mean, what has he done with all his wealth that he has...
Well, presumably he's stolen a lot of wealth and then, yeah, I can't remember if he specifically says what happens, but...
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I think you needed to have a character who was... So obviously Rincewind's quite cowardly, but as he runs away from things, he runs into other stuff. Two Flower's just like this amiable, naive guy. So you need somebody who's got, I think, a bit more savvy, but also a bit more bravery. Yeah. But then his own thing is that, you know, I think he's fine that he needs help physically with stuff. Yeah. It's just the teeth thing bothers him, which just makes me think of all those adverts for, like, dental work they have on the radio. But yeah, that's the thing that bothers him. Like, no one sort of refers to it because it's obviously a bit of a sore point, even though he's lisping and can't chew. But then he says of Two Flower, it's interesting. He says, oh, Two Flower can see for 50 years because Two Flower, as soon as he knows he's Cohen the Barbarian, it's like, oh, it's Cohen. He doesn't think, oh, it's this sort of rangy old guy. Although he obviously notices the teeth. He's just like, wow. He's just starstruck. Whereas Rincewind's a bit like, oh, yeah, I see what's happened. Then we can also talk about Bethans. They actually introduce a female character who's fairly well-rounded, although obviously there's a very strong, like, May to December or May to the following sort of February thing going on with her and Cohen.
Yeah.
Because she's 17, he's, like, 80-something.
Yes.
So that's a bit... And again, I think it's part of the joke that Cohen's living as he always did, so he rescues a maiden and...
Yeah. But I think Bethan... because she's able to do kind of basic chiropractic on him to sort out his bad back, and
which does sort of seem to be nursing him, which maybe it felt kind of Catherine Parr-ish. Not that Catherine Parr actually did that with Henry VIII, but that's the
but she seemed
reputation.
I think the thing is so Bethan's a character. You know, she basically is a virgin sacrifice, and that was her. And up until the point she got saved, that was her entire. She was going to be a virgin sacrifice. She was going to go
be with the moon goddess.
Yes, and so obviously once she got rescued, she suddenly didn't have
a plan.
No,
and
I don't think she's doing it. She's sort of nursemaiding Cohen because she's grateful. I think it's just that.
She does seem to have... She seems very practical, so there is an element of her being a bit like, you know, like he's hurting and I think he asks her to get his liniment a couple of times and then he's having trouble, so she just kind of does it. So I think, and Pratchett does write a lot of practical women, I think there's an element of her just like, oh, right, well, you know, he's rescued me and he needs help with this, I'm just going to help and I'm going to do this. But then later when they're in the town with all the creepy, like, basically anti-magic fascist people... You know, she's the one who's kind of like noticing what's happened, trying to organise things to an extent. Yeah, I think it feels a bit uncomfortable, the age difference, but I think it's kind of more part of a joke.
Yeah, I think to be honest, it's also, but it's not. Again, it's agency insofar as she's chosen to do that.
Well, yeah, but as you say, she was only ever going to do one thing. It's not like she's been given, right, now we've rescued you. You have a whole range of opportunities. She just kind of falls in with them, because where else is she going to go? So, yes, she has more agency in that she's not been sacrificed. And she does build up her own agency and becomes more of an equal member of the group and is doing things herself. But it's not really clear where else she would even go. Her own society were going to sacrifice her. So I think there's an element of, like, that which isn't really explored. Although, again, I do want to go back to talking about female characters a little bit, because as well as Bethan, we also have, I think it's Helena, who's the other female character, or main female character in the book. I will say the crowd scenes have gotten better too, because with the sort of scary fascist people, there do seem to be some women in the crowd as well as men. Yeah. Whereas in Colour of Magic, it wasn't quite clear, you know, if anyone in the background was a woman. Helena is basically a swordswoman who, the way I'm going to describe it, because this is how she's sort of introduced as somebody who's hunting down Rincewind and the spell on his head. She was too big to be a thief, too honest to be an assassin, too intelligent to be a wife, and too proud to enter the only other female profession generally available. Which I think is interesting because it's sort of like saying these are the options for ladies here. Yes, it's I guess it's part of the joke, but it's a bit like if you look at Bethan, well, which of these... The whole thing with her, I get the impression, again, she's kind of like a barbarian type, so she's quite big, but she, again, has an element of practicality. There is also a thing where it's a bit...
Brienne of Tarth, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Game of Thrones, she you know, that's...
Yeah.
Except more... But less knightly, more mercenary.
Well, yeah, but she's clearly a freelancer, so she's been stuck with these guys who she knows are a bit dodgy, but she's clearly smart.
Well, what was mean? Less in full plate mail and more in...
No. This is the point. No.
Okay.
Because it makes a joke about, at this point, the author turns to the cover artist, and there's some sort of joke about, scantily clad ladies, but actually she was dressed quite practically, which is interesting because on the cover of the book, that is in fact, the joke is kind of undercut by the cover of this book.
What was I saying? I thought she was not in less knightly stuff, but more chainmail, leather jerky. Not the sexy stuff. No, that was not. No, sorry, that was not what I was. No, it was more your sort of less full plate and knightly look. Yes. It's more your chain shirt, your leather jerkin,
it does say, but your
reasonable cloak.
Yeah, it basically sounds like she is covered up and wearing something practical. But the fact is, there's a joke in there, which is obviously making a joke on a lot of fancy art about how lady barbarian warrior type, she'll be dressed, the cover artist, and it's like, I'm looking at the cover of this book and it's worse than the narrative suggests.
You didn't get the notes there, Kidby, did you?
I mean, I've heard other people comment that Kidby kind of drew something that captured a feeling of the book but was not any particular scene.
Yeah.
So, but yes, I think it is an improvement, although I feel the cover's still a little bit telling, and also, although I've mentioned two sort of main female characters and there are some background characters, I'm pretty sure this still doesn't pass Bechdel-Wallace test, which again is a low bar.
No, they don't. They don't. They do it. They are in the same area and interact. They don't really interact.
They're both named. I don't believe they talk to each other.
No, but the group Bethan's captured as part of the group.
Bethan's captured as part of the group, but there's no indication that her and Horan specifically speak
to
each other.
So at least they're in the same vicinity as each other.
Well, the whole point of the Bechdel-Wallace test is that it's a low bar.
Oh, I know.
Also, it was published. I checked this the year, that the comic that was in came out the year before this book was published. Although I appreciate it wasn't particularly well known. It's something that came to notoriety more in the the tens or
it's
obviously been a bit more of an internet famous thing more recently. But yeah, I feel like that's faded a bit.
I think it's realised to be a very low bar, and that.
But at one point, people seem to be.
We really need to do better than just the lowest bar we can.
Yeah. But anyway, yes.
Moving on.
Yeah. So I think an improvement in general, but yes.
And obviously later on we get a lot more.
Well, we get female-centred books.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, obviously, a large chunk of the book is taken up by the Wizards, who is a male-dominated. And I say dominated, it's purely men.
I mean, well, the next book's going to go into that a bit, isn't it?
Yeah,
but yes, this is where we get the Unseen Universities introduced and the sort of mad academic world of the Wizards, except it's less academic now and more fighty.
Yes, I mean...
schemy.
I think, later on... They're a bit more... I don't understand how the Unseen University operates as it does in this book, basically, because the idea of you gain...
get promoted.
Promoted by Dead Man's Shoes. And it's a fun idea, but you would never get anything done.
Have you... it's the Unseen University, if you've not noticed. That's
okay, fair enough. But,
it's based on academia.
Yes, but...
to the point where apparently... I'm very much adjacent to that, so I don't know a lot, but apparently a lot of people have said of the wizard stuff. It's how did he know? Although I think that's more later.
Okay, but I'm pretty certain they don't literally kill people in modern academia.
They're not supposed to, certainly. So I think he's taking kind of cut and thrust, kind of a more corporate environment, although I think various bits of academia do have that as well, and making it quite literal. Also, I suppose you've got to remember, with the background of it, there's the whole magic wars that happened, and it's clear that the wizards have been put in one place to be contained. But Trimon, who's the main kind of murdery, scheming wizard guy in this, there's a lot of corporate stuff about him, so he's sending around memos and he's got projections, and all the old wizards what's happening? What's this guy doing?
I think it's described in there as not that actually the best wizard, but he's he's more interested in corporate in structures and
organisations
and things like that. So whereas when he's actually having a meeting of the wizards, he actually produces an agenda, which confuses them greatly. But I mean, again, this is a first sight of, and later on
things change
with
your later books.
Ridcully, the Arts Chancellor that comes in later, sort of stabilises it. But again, you've got in this, you've got like the idea of numbers or orders of magic within the which kind of disappears somewhat.
I think it's a little bit like in the previous book where they had this thing where Ankh-Morpork was there, but it was changing, and the events of this book are changed. I think with the Unseen University, it's introduced, but obviously the events of this book, like with the kind of monstrous stuff at the end, does change stuff because a load of people get turned to stone, don't they?
Yes.
And then I think over the course of a few books, because I can't really remember what happens much in the next book, but certainly Sorcery I remember better. So there's various things that change the wizard stuff, and then I think he stabilises it more and makes it more a lot of old comfortable duffers who are like interested in their area of expertise, but not very practical, but less like murdery.
Yes, definitely less murdery. But it's always, the wizards are always fun, and certainly I like some of the stuff they do with them later. Though
I think I kind of come and go on that a little bit, but it's I think this is just, again, it's like an early version of it, but it'll be in the process of being changed as he does the earlier books. And also, the most important of the Unseen University introduces the librarian. Yes,
this is where we find how the librarian became, well, not the librarian, but an orangutan.
Yeah.
Ook. Yes, and which kind of make, again, the logic behind having an orangutan as a librarian works quite well. So
it's of a magical library as well.
Lots of high shelves,
the books chained up and in cells, and doing creepy things, because that's it. It's a bit more creepy in this, isn't it?
Yeah.
I feel like with the plot, the antagonists kept kind of shifting. So at first you've kind of got Arts Chancellor Weatherwax, who's kind of like the established top guy, and so he's after Rincewind, and the wizards are generally after Rincewind, and there's kind of an element of them trying to work together to get Rincewind, but they don't naturally work together. And,
no, they're terrible at working together.
But they've got a bigger goal because of the spell on Rincewind's head, but then he is got rid of. And then you've got Trimon, so he seems like he'd be the bad guy, and he kind of is, but it's like the wizards are introduced and they aren't in quite a big section in the middle of the book, and then they kind of get circled back to.
Yeah.
At which point Trimon's kind of been taken over by like the spell, and a theme of quite a few of the early Discworld books, the shapeless, creepy beings.
Monsters from the dungeon dimensions. Yes.
So, because later on that's less of a thing, but it's obviously a big theme in quite a few Discworld books. And then it gets a bit kind of, not quite cosmic horror, but certainly a bit more kind of like, not quite grim, but it's a bit more like, oh, this guy was like an unpleasant, officious guy who was willing to murder to get to the top in a profession where that is normal.
Yeah.
But he was doing it in a weird corporate way that none of the old regularly bloodthirsty members really understood. But then he gets it like infested with all these monsters, and it becomes like more of a battle at the end there.
Yeah, that becomes more, Rincewind versus a, cosmic horror than...
But then you've also got, you've got Trimon transformed, you've got Dungeon Dimensions, you also have like, obviously Death was kind of the antagonist in the previous book, and now he's a lot more normal, which we'll probably talk
circle
about
back
in a moment.
to, but yeah.
But then you also have the unnamed fascist mobs,
yes.
which... Now, in my head, I think I conflated that more with Trimon. Like, I think I felt there was like a leader of them, and he seemed to be the one it would be, but it's not that.
No, very much. I think it's...
Well, I know that now.
Yeah, I think it's just... It's the idea that, these things kind of crop up when you've got this...
Yeah,
this
unknown... So the star appears, the red star, and at first it's small, but gets bigger and bigger because... Great Toon's swimming towards it, and so they think, it's going to crash into the disc, it's going to destroy the disc. And there's like, on the wizard side of things, there's prophecies, and if the great spells are said, will it save everyone? Or maybe they don't want to be said, so it's not quite clear what the outcome is supposed to be. And then basically,
to be fair, the great spells don't really know either.
But then you've got this thing where they've been in like the wilds for quite a bit, and then they go into a town, and suddenly everything's all creepy and quiet. I think I half remembered this, although I think when I read it as a teenager, I was like, oh, this is about fascism. And now I'm like, oh, Yeah, because you've got all these people who are like, the star's getting bigger, everyone's very worried, there's, world-changing catastrophe visibly, palpably coming, and people are like, oh, it's magic that's the problem, we'll kill the wizards and we'll burn the books. And this is, which is the obvious fashion, and we're going to smash up stores. So, like, the Dwarven character, he's sort of been targeted a bit, but not completely, but they're kind of coming for him. Someone said they murdered some wizards. Yeah. They've got stars painted on their heads. And yeah, it just seems to be groupthink. And like, there's no one. I thought there was a leader, but they just seem to be
I think the idea is that they crop up all over the disc, kind of spontaneously. This idea that,
Yeah, it changes it from like, oh, we're having an adventure and there's wizards and magic stuff, to, oh, no, because then they end up hopping through different cities and it seems to be the same everywhere. People have red stars on their faces.
That's the thing, it's wherever they go, it's kind of, there isn't a sort of, there's no sort of group meeting, it's not spreading, it's just kind of appearing.
Well, I think it is spreading, but it's like in an insidious way, and they've decided these people, these books, these artifacts, these objects are the problem, and we will band together and destroy them.
Yes.
Which is obviously chilling and horrifying and far too familiar. But then there's a bit where Rincewind's talking to Death, and Rincewind says, oh, I thought you would have been all for it. And Death said, like, not like this. The death of the warrior or the old man or the little child, this I understand. I take away the pain and end the suffering. I do not understand this death of the mind.
Yeah.
So I think Pratchett's making very clear fascism is bad. And I think when I was a teenager, I was like, well, yes, of course it's bad. Seems a bit heavy-handed. And now it's a bit like, oh, must we keep saying it? Must we keep saying it? We must. We must keep saying it.
It does seem like we should scream it from the rooftops.
Yeah. Just, if things are scary, maybe band together and help each other and try and work through things and not just go, these people, they're the problem, let's destroy them.
Because 9 times out of 10, they're not the problem.
No.
Anyway, yeah, I think to be honest, they for a comedy book, they are quite a heavy aspect of
Well, this thing, it felt like it shifted. It's got different bits, and the sort of fascisty bit is like, oh no.
And bearing in mind that they're kind of traveling, they're bouncing around through these cities, seeing all the fashion in a traveling shop, kind of
Yes, that's interesting.
It's a strange,
I think that bit sort of shifts tonally. It feels like it shifts tonally again when they get back to Ankh-Morpork, and there's kind of the battle with the kind of gribbly creatures. So there's a few sort of shifts to it. Did we want to talk about Death the character a little bit?
I think we need to, because obviously we complained about his
Yeah, I think you said before you thought it was Mort when you got better, but actually this
is very much. I mean, obviously, there's still more to come. But, I think definitely this is much more. He's not stalking Rincewind to claim his soul. Not claim his, but to kill him and then killing random things. You run into him in his house. His domain.
When they say run into him, like they've gone to go and reclaim Two Flower, who's having, a near-death experience, or gone to Death's house and teaching him how to play bridge experience. Yes. In that bit I just read out, I think that's almost Pratchett signalling he's different now, because I thought you'd be for this, because the guy before seemed like he would be, like, they're killing a load of people, yay. But then he's like, no, I take away the pain, but not this, the death of the mind thing. We do see before them, and we get the first intro of this thing that looks quite normal, but everything's black, because that's on theme. Yes. And he also makes sort of jokes a bit, with the wizards as well.
Yeah, it definitely much out this game that he wants to play with obviously, I say his friends, going
with that, but you have stuff like, when he's talking to the wizards and they've summoned him. Yes, they're asking him something and then pretentious, and they're trying to do the whole right and saying all the words, and he's like, yes, can we get on? Yeah. Which kind of takes the wind out of Art's chance to wax his sails a bit. But he says, the party's going well, but it won't be at midnight. And they're like, oh, why not? He's like, well, that's when it expects me to take off my mask. Yeah. So it's kind of funny. And again, what was the other bit? Oh, the thing with the wizard that locks him, tries to hide her from death.
Oh, yes.
The old guy, I forget his name.
I can't remember his name.
I mean, he's old even for a wizard. But he very carefully constructs a chamber and all this magical stuff, runes and magical circles and all sorts of things for protection. And then he hides in this box and goes, oh, fine. And then he's suddenly thinking, maybe I should have put air holes in this. And suddenly Death's there going, dark in here, isn't it? Which just reminded me of how a character died in The Good Place.
Oh, yes.
It's like in a safe with a scuba mask. It's like, oh dear.
It's nice. It's a fun little scene with the four of them, and we also run into.
Is it Isabel?
I think it's supposed to be Isabel, but
it's spelled with a Y, so I'm not super sure.
Yeah,
she's a bit more creepy actually.
Yeah, she is. I can kind of understand. I mean, she's a character we'll come across later as well. Death's adopted daughter, and I could kind of understand living there.
Well, she's kind of, again, it's mentioned like she's sort of frozen in time, isn't she? And
Yeah.
There's no other children or young people around.
No.
It's just her and her father, who's the Grim Reaper,
Although
in an entirely black place.
the intersection between Isabel and Albert.
Albert's not mentioned in this,
No,
though,
that's
is
the
he?
thing. So I don't know whether.
I guess Albert's kind of like a servant. I mean, yeah, Albert's there, but yeah, that's more for a later book.
Yes,
but
it's...
I think it's just that Rincewind, having been chased by death before and then is in his domain rescuing his friend, finds he doesn't seem quite so bad, and it's all oddly normal if skull-laden.
Yes.
And then Isabel turns up and he actually finds her a bit creepy, but again, I can't imagine she's been well socialised.
No, she just basically wants them to stay. Basically wants someone to play with.
Yeah, well, she says she only gets to meet dead people normally.
Yeah, so yes, but yeah, she'll come in, but yes, I think it's.
Again, I suppose that's another female character who gets introduced and will be continuing through at least.
But yes, I think his last comment was right. He said, "Pestilence, open another pack of cards. I'm going to get to the bottom of this if it kills me." Figuratively speaking, of course.
Yeah, again, another joke. So yeah, you've got. I guess we were saying for more of these jokes kind of littered in, and again, I think Death's kind of a bit aware of being humorous.
Yes,
he's not that jerk from the first book.
No, we like this one a lot better. Yeah,
and obviously he only gets more characterisation as you go through.
One thing I did notice, which I mean was very small note in Colour of Magic, and is slightly more in here, footnotes.
Yes, that's true. Yeah,
a staple of Pratchett Discworld books is the footnote to explain something, because obviously fantasy world, and he's throwing in references. And so there was one footnote in Colour of Magic.
Oh yeah, but it was a longish one, wasn't
it? There are more in like Fantastic, and that kind of again makes it feel more like an actual Discworld book, because footnotes.
There was also that thing where the narrative goes off on a slight tangent that then crops up again that I noticed. Again, it's more of a tonal thing. So there's that thing where he says some previous rule of Ankh-Morpork wouldn't let you use figurative language. So he keeps, in the narrative, there'll be like a figurative piece of language, like, and I can't think of any of the examples now.
He starts describing the light that travels in the disc as flowing like golden syrup across the land.
Yeah.
Which would be banned in Ankh-Morpork under... unless it was actually golden syrup.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. There was like a previous patrician who, yes, you get the impression it's a historical thing, who wouldn't allow it. And so every so often he'll be doing like a simile or a metaphor, and then he'll kind of almost stop it and do it literally, so kind of undercutting the figurative language. Which again, sort of that kind of, it happens a fair bit around that bit that's mentioned because that's part of the joke, but it just crops up a couple of times later. So, and again, that does feel more like the style he's developing.
Right, do you have any more specific thoughts you want to bring up? Points. I'm sure we've there's a lot more to this book than the Colour of Magic, I think.
Oh, absolutely,
Which makes it much more of an enjoyable read than...
Yeah, and I think we've got stuff like the troll thing. So in this, the trolls, well, it's the whole sort of, the Scandinavian version of trolls, where they turn to stone in the daytime.
Trolls. Trolls from the Hobbit.
Okay, I feel like the Scandinavians probably did it before Tolkien also.
Yes, but I mean that would have been the more...
I'd forgotten that.
Yeah, that would have been the link that more people would have been aware of than the...
I don't know. It's in Hilda.
Okay,
that's what I remembered.
Yes, Hilda is a more modern interpretation of Scandinavian folklore.
Okay, I've got Scandinavian folklore and I've got Hilda, and you've mentioned Tolkien's in between, so I think we've covered the things. Because later books you've got, well, like I said before, kind of the urban trolls who go around. This is very much the rural ones, and there's the whole thing where they they turn to stone in the daytime. And
doesn't that get dropped though? Because
I think they kind of do. Well, because there's one they talk about like old grandpa, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then it turns out people are camping in his mountain because they think he's a mountain,
Yeah.
which is also a thing that happens in Hilda. But that's a giant. But yeah, it's the point. There's this giant's troll, but they look so much like rock formations that people just camped in his mouth. And they're like, this cave is very weird. What's with this row of rocks at the front? And like, why can we feel a slight breeze? And it's like they've lit a fire in his mouth. He's not happy. And then as soon as the sun comes up, obviously with the slow flowing light.
Yeah.
That's hard to say. It sort of freezes him before he's about to crush them. But Rincewind actually has to chat with a whole group of trolls. And again, you've got another female character because there's one called Beryl.
Yes.
This is the thing. If you just have like a couple of main female characters and some seeded fruit, it's much better than just a book where, as far as you can tell, there's like 3 female characters and not
a full item of clothing between them. I don't know. Sorry, the ones who've got a cloak. I put it.
Yes, she has a cloak, but again, she's introduced in this weird way where the gender isn't mentioned. You're like, well, it's going to be a woman because every other background character has been a man so far, at least as far as one can tell. So
yeah, that doesn't work unless you're not sure.
But yeah, so that's another thing. So you got the troll thing, but I do feel like there's quite a big difference between the rural trolls who are basically kind of like mountains and rock formations that come alive at night.
Yeah,
the old ones, they say, just turn into mountains. They sort of slow down.
They start pondering things, and they're...
Well, there's also the whole thing with the seeing time backwards, because that's the one bit I did sort of remember about the troll lore from reading it, back when I was a teenager. It's that the trolls feel like they're travelling backwards through time because you can see you can see the past, but you can't see the future. So therefore, you must be looking backwards. So they think time goes the other way, which isn't. It's mentioned like a bit as kind of like flavour to it, but that's why they then have the prophecy of Rincewind. Like, they know they have to help Rincewind, and it's been passed along because I think the idea is that trolls, which I think is just kind of like an interesting thought experiment he's put in the book, and then it's useful for this prophecy because they're remembering the future. It's still an interesting piece, and again, the fact that they go still and they get old and big and they just slow down with thinking is very different to the whole urban troll thing where they're supposed to be very stupid. So it does feel like they're almost 2 different types of thing, but from the same background. But obviously the practicalities in later books are different.
Yeah. Okay, so final thoughts. I mean, obviously we would suggest people read. I think you definitely have to, if you've read Colour of Magic, you definitely have to read this because it's a much better experience. As I said at the start, unfortunately, you can't just give someone this to read because I think this would be without having to fill in a bit of the characterization.
I think if they've read other Discworld books and have an idea of the energy of it, you might be able to. But
it's not a starting point if you've not entered into the series.
That's
at all.
True. No,
I think there's not enough.
Yeah, you can start Colour of Magic. It's tricky to start Light Fantastic. Although
I think it's the Rincewind and Two Flower bit. You don't have the character. You don't have the character build up.
Well, you don't have the explanation of how they met or why they're in that situation, but their characters are both there. Like Rincewind is still, running away from stuff. But
I just feel that you kind of it's.
I don't know.
Anyway,
when I was younger, I used to read the third books of things without realising. So
I generally wouldn't suggest starting with any of the first 4. That's Mort.
Mort's 4, so you probably would recommend the 4. Okay, yeah.
Where's Source? Anyway,
Sorcerer's 5.
Sorcery's 5. Okay, I thought it was
no
equal rights Mort Sorcery, isn't it? Okay, I thought
yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, I thought Sorcery and Mort were the other way around. Okay, not a problem. I did not read them in order when I read them.
Neither did I, but it says it in the front of the book.
I didn't look at the front of the book. Hang on.
That's where the list is.
Okay.
Anyway,
it's been a while.
It's fair enough. Not an entry point, but a big improvement.
Yes, I think you'd want to read this before you read Sorcery.
Yes, probably. I can't remember if that was the order I did it, but yeah.
Because otherwise, Rincewind and the Wizards.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, we'll obviously come to this when we do Sorcery, but
Yeah. But I think a lot of the rest of it, it's definitely building on with seeing more of the Discworld stuff that we know, like the tone, the world to an extent. I suppose we didn't really mention the end.
Oh no, don't want to spoil too much.
Okay. I thought we were just saying these were spoilery. Yeah.
No, we can mention.
Well, just that everyone's thinking, oh no, it's Doom, and then there's it's the most turtley book because there are lots of little tiny baby turtles.
Little baby
I say tiny, enormous. like moon size.
Yes.
I mean, like our moon, not the disc moon, which is tiny. But yes,
and very little elephants as well.
tiny little elephants and little discs on their backs. So yeah, so that's. I think it's the most turtly one.
Yes,
The turtle becomes less of a thing later on.
I was just thinking about reading style. I think you need to read these ones for the wizards ones, but there's stuff that's introduced in here doesn't overlap too much until late. You've not got stuff that to do
Start
guards,
one of the other
guards or
Mort, really. Well, Isabel's introduced, but I feel like she's more introduced in Mort, so you
Yeah.
don't need. I think I read Mort before I read this.
Yeah.
Didn't cause a problem. Yeah, I think it's more like the tone building up. And yeah, you're right. It's wizardy is the background. More other stuff. Yeah, you probably don't need it so much. And in fact, the troll stuff's probably a bit confusing with the urban trolls.
Yeah.
Later on,
but still a good book.
Yeah.
And we look forward to continue reading more and reminding ourselves of all the little things that we completely forgot because it's been a while.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.
Good night. Thank you for listening to Dining Table Discworld. You can find us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Dining Table Discworld. You can also find us on BlueSky at dtdiscworld. All our other contact information and credits for our music can be found in our show notes. Thank you for listening again, and we'll see you in our next episode.